Persuasion. As an expert on the energy market, you draw from a huge pile of potential reasons to write. Sometimes you write simply to report on events, to get them in the historical record. Sometimes you write to educate an audience about a complicated event. Sometimes to describe a process, or to analyze, explain, discover, or solve a problem. Sometimes you write to persuade someone else to do something, to take action, or to accept change. When persuasion is your goal, you should focus your writing on 3 general strategies. 1. Find the why. 2. Craft your essential message. And 3. Tell your story. Let's begin with why. In Simon Sinek's Start with Why, How Great Leaders Inspire Everyone to Take Action, he talks about Samuel Pierpont Langley. In the early 1900s, everybody expected Langley to be the first man to pilot an airplane. He was a senior officer at the Smithsonian Institution, a Harvard math professor. He had $50,000 in grant money from the War Department. That was a lot of money then. He had a dream team of engineers. They used only the best materials. The press followed him everywhere. Everybody knew Langley's team would be the first to fly. Meanwhile, in a bicycle shop in Dayton, Ohio, Wilbur and Orville Wright were working on their own flying machine. The brothers were so passionate in their audacious goal that they inspired an enthusiastic, committed group of local volunteers to work well beyond their skill set. They had no money, no grants, no government connections. No one on the team even went to college, not even Wilbur or Orville. But their team beat Langley and his dream team, taking flight first on December 17, 1903. Both teams were motivated. Both worked hard. Both had great scientific minds. But it was the Wright brothers, not Langley, who inspired the people around them to develop that technology first. According to Sinek, only the Wright brothers started with why. They did a better job than Langley of motivating their team with the purpose of their work, why they were doing it. Sinek describes many political and business leaders who start with why, people who have motivated others to buy something or vote a particular way, or to work harder or smarter or follow the rules or adapt to change. He argues that people who can persuade or motivate others to act or think differently typically do it by helping their audience understand the purpose of the request, the why. This makes taking action or changing or accepting an idea more natural, less to be resisted. We can apply Sinek's idea to our writing work. Writers who express a clear sense of purpose, of the why, can create the conditions in which the readers will buy in, not because they have to, but because they want to. The why is what achieves it. But sometimes when we write, we never get around to the why. Even with piles of good data and advice, we don't reach our readers. When this happens, we may think it's because we've missed some small vital detail. So maybe we go back to the piles of data to figure out what to do. But that doesn't always help, especially if we've built a flawed assumption into the process in the first place. We have to consider other factors, factors outside the data pile. Sinek has this idea of the golden circle, inspired by the mathematical golden ratio. In the outer circle is the word what. Inside that is another circle with the word how, and inside that is the final innermost circle with the word why. For example, what? ISO writers almost always can explain what an initiative or process does. You do a great job summarizing that. How? Some ISO writers can explain how an initiative or process does it. This isn't as obvious as the what. It can be hard, but still, it's not enough. Why? Very few ISO writers clearly articulate why an initiative or process will do what it will do. By why, I mean what is the purpose, cause, or expectation behind the initiative or process, why it should happen. Sometimes, answering those why questions requires going deep. You may need to ask yourself, why does your department exist? Why are you writing this particular document? Why are you including this pile of information for this reader? Why should the reader be moved or changed by it? Sinek argues that people don't act or decide based on what you do, they act on why you do it. When they know your why, they can trust your message. This does not mean you should exclude the what or the how. They are logically essential. But the why is the most persuasive question you'll answer. When you've determined the why, you're ready to choose your essential message. Cynthia Ricchetti and Benjamin Trago research analytic processes in education. Their work reminds us of a simple thing. Every process begins with input and produces output. If we're making barbecued ribs, the output, we need fresh meat, good sauce, good seasoning, the input. But we also need to make sure we grill it well, the process. Maybe we've got the best tasting sauce in the world, but if we let the ribs burn, we're not going to have tasty ribs. The same logic applies to writing. A sound, useful, meaningful conclusion, the output, requires high-quality, accurate information, the input, and high-quality thinking, the process. Focusing on the input is not enough. We have to give equal attention to the process, or what we do with the input, how we organize, analyze, and express it, will lead to an inferior output. Sometimes ISO writers over-rely on the input. Information is definitely essential, but sometimes we use it ineffectively. We overlook or minimize vital pieces of information or emphasize relatively unimportant or irrelevant information. Our information is not the problem. Our process is. The core part of our writing process should be asking the question why and choosing the essential message that will help the reader achieve this purpose. To do this means culling from the virtually infinite sources of information at your fingertips. It isn't all necessary. In fact, too much information draws your reader away from your essential message. When you're sure of the why and you've crafted your essential message, sorting and eliminating information that does not support it, then of course you'll support your paragraphs with the evidence that relates. But consider adding something to your traditional economic forms of evidence: tables, graphs, summary, explanation. Consider using story. Here's how Ted Koppel uses elements of storytelling to introduce readers to the topic of his best-selling book, Lights Out. One hot summer afternoon in August 2003, a high-voltage power line in northern Ohio brushed against some overgrown trees and shut down. Sagging power lines, softened by a combination of weather and high current, are a common enough occurrence, and ordinarily the problem would have tripped an alarm. As system operators struggled to diagnose the problem, 3 other lines failed in the same way, forcing the surrounding grid to take on additional current. In just an hour and a half, these overburdened lines fell like dominoes, resulting in the largest blackout in North American history. 50 million people lost power for up to 2 days in an area that spanned southeastern Canada and 8 northeastern states. 11 deaths were attributed to this outage, and repairs cost an estimated $6 billion. This is how Koppel introduces us to his topic. Now, why is this effective at persuading readers to the relevance of the message? The brain activity of readers aligns to that of storytellers due to mirror neurons, brain cells that fire not only when we take action, but when we perceive someone else taking action. As we become involved in a story, described events become real in our bodies physiologically. Cortisol mixes with oxytocin in our brain, and we experience a phenomenon called transportation. We're hooked. Economist Paul Zach's studies show stories are far more persuasive than simple listing of facts at motivating behavior in readers, that they even seem to trigger the neurochemical processes that make certain kinds of resource sharing possible. This biological activity can lead to profound behavioral changes, including costly acts of altruism. This is the neurochemical process that inspires people to support political campaigns, churches, universities, libraries, or for that matter, governmental initiatives. Stories can persuade people to make changes for something larger than themselves. In our workshop today, we'll talk about how to combine these 3 strategies for persuading readers. Find the why, craft your essential message, and tell your story.